Nick speaking, and welcome to this video, the Necron Learning Curve, and today we're having a look at the last fast attack choice, which is the Destroyers. Now Destroyers, in actual fact, are pretty much two units, because you have the Heavy Destroyer option, where previously Heavy Destroyer was in the Heavy Support slot, they're now in the Fast Attack slot, under the heading of Destroyers. So first we're going to look at Destroyers, and then we're going to move on to Heavy Destroyers. So first of all then, the Destroyer itself. Let's have a look at the model. These are my very early days of my modelling, where before I even knew anything about magnets, so I have actually glued all mine onto the bases. Having said that, as they've broken, I've magnetised them. There's my magnetised one, here we go. So yeah, I've magnetised them on as they've broken. So you can always check out my previous video. I've got a video on how to magnetise flying bases, if you're interested in that. But let's have a look at the model. So it's basically a shooty unit. One of the big things that it now has compared to the previous edition is an AP3 gun. It's not as strong, it doesn't have such a big range, and now they're jump units rather than bike units. But you know, AP3, fantastic. So they're basically a Space Marine killer. They're ideal for that job. They do have reanimation protocol, which straight off means that you're not really going to be wanting to take small units of these guys, because small units are going to die easy without a chance of getting back up. When the whole unit's wiped out, you can't stand back up. So ideally you want a bigger sized unit, which is going to be 5, that's the maximum. Now there are a few other tricks that we can use to help this unit survive. They do have a nice 3+ save. Obviously the jump packs means unfortunately they can't get their jinx saves because they're not bikes anymore. So they're jump packs, they have hammer and wrath. Wow, well you're not going to be assaulting with these guys, so don't worry about that. But the AP3 is where you want to take the advantage of these guys. So I suppose a little bit like Tomb Blades, you could potentially have them up front in the middle of the table, and you could sort of move them to the side. Potentially you could deep strike them. I mean, they are jump packs, so you can deep strike them in, although you've got to watch out for your scatter. Another option is to keep them in reserve and bring them on as a backup later in the game. A nice number of 24-inch AP3 shots. Strength 5, pretty decent. Hopefully later in the game your enemy will be a bit closer to you as well, so you can come on your 12, shoot 24. It's quite a reasonable range, so you could potentially hold them off in reserve if you wanted to. Failing that, you just get them to work the flanks. You have them on the left, have them on the right, and just work down the flanks, which is always a good option. Now to make these guys slightly better than they are, step in the Destroyer Lord. Now I don't want to go too much into the Destroyer Lord because we'll have a separate video on the Destroyer Lord. Basically put the Destroyer Lord with this unit, give him the weave, which will basically have his 2+ save, so you can have him up front, he can take all of the bullets that are coming in, you know, at least he can take a couple of wounds, keep that unit alive. It really does make them survivable. Potentially give him a resurrection orb so he can get up easier. And you can really hone in on this unit. But as a unit by itself, it's pretty decent, as long as I said, you really do need a bigger unit. Now one of the other key features they have is preferred enemy. So effectively when you're shooting, only a 2 is going to miss in the first round of shooting, and then you'll be able to re-roll those 1s. So unless that re-roll of 1 is a 1 or a 2, you know, you're going to get a lot of shots through, and that's every time you shoot. So that's really useful. And of course if you do happen to get into assault, that preferred enemy is in the assault as well. So you've got some nice guns, you've got a good movement, and you've got a reasonable range with them. So let's talk Heavy Destroyers. Now Heavy Destroyers, you can upgrade up to 3 of these with a Heavy Destroyer. So one option is to just upgrade 1. Now basically the stats are exactly the same, except this gun on here is effectively a las cannon. So it's a strength 9 AP2 36-inch gun. So it's quite nice if you're out of range to get some nice long shots in. And in reality, you know, we don't have many long-range guns in our Necron force. So destroyers heavy destroyers are actually pretty useful for that. Now you can just maybe have one in there, just give a pop shot. You can potentially upgrade up to 3. So you could have a nice mixed unit like this. Probably have those at the front. So that gives you nice long range. You may start to find that these guys at the front will just become wound counters, because you'll be taking advantage of the last cannons probably more. Now, okay, that does work, but then these are 40 points a model, so it's, you know, expensive wound counters. But that is one option, to have a mixed unit. And lastly is the old-fashioned heavy destroyer units. So that's basically one unit with 3 heavy destroyers in. Now the great thing about these are they're fast attack, they're not heavy support. So it leaves open your heavy support slots for lots of very nice goodies that we have in there. We'll come to heavy support soon, but yeah, there's some great stuff in there. So these guys, we can take these without filling that spot, which is fantastic. There's lots of little tactics that you can use. I mean, one option for using these guys, especially if you're using a flyer heavy force, is you could use these to target your opponent's quad gun, sorry, Icarus cannon thing. Could be quite useful, have them on the table, you know, turn 1 before your flyers come in to stop that, can't remember what it's called now, but where they shoot at you on the turn that you arrive. You don't want that happening. So yeah, it could be a good idea maybe to take out your opponent's quad gun with these, turn 1. Obviously it depends on the environment that you're in with these guys as well, because, you know, do you need 3 las cannons in the environment that you're playing? Are they going to be useful to you? Obviously they're fantastic for taking out land raiders and stuff like that. I suppose ultimately the destroyers are also based on what environment you're in as well. Because obviously if you don't need AP3 guns, then you don't necessarily need these. You may find that other guns that just give you more shots is more beneficial. I mean, potentially not even the armies that you're playing. If you're playing in a heavy terrain environment, you know, where there's always loads of terrain on the board, then the AP3 is going to be almost wasted as well. So that's just a few things to bear in mind. Personally, I haven't been really using the destroyers that much. I did when the first rulebook came out, just because I didn't have any tomb blades. They did work. I did prefer to hold them in the reserve, and that was mainly because the opponent I was playing just came down with his drop pod, this stern guard, and, you know, destroyers were a high priority target. AP3 gun, they were being destroyed very early in the game. So then I had to resort into reserving them, which did work, but it's a bit unreliable. Okay, I could deep strike them in myself. I must admit, I never did that. But really, to be fair, I then sort of moved over to Wraiths, because, you know, Wraiths, 2 wounds, 3+ invulnerable save, awesome in the assault, blah blah blah. Check out the previous video, Wraiths are awesome. So yeah, it's a hard one really now. I don't tend to use them. Maybe I should, maybe I will. Maybe I have plans for these in my Flayed One army, which I've got coming up. An army of 60 Flayed Ones, which I'm really looking forward to finishing. Still collecting the models. I've managed to get a few more, so hopefully it's not going to be too much longer till that happens. But yeah. Okay, so that's it for destroyers stroke heavy destroyers. And next up, we're going to go straight on to the heavy support slot. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully it was useful, and thanks for watching.